the first week of October. So it's been going for 3.5 months-ish. I'll have, I think, 30 posts by the end of the month. Current site traffic, last I looked yesterday, was around 3,500 a month. A lot of that is from social traffic. So I'm doing a lot on Pinterest.
What's going on? This is the Doug Show, and this is Doug Cunnington speaking right now. In this interview, I'm going to talk to Christy, and this is a cool one. This is actually a live interview that I did because Christy lives in Bozeman also. And we talk about that just a little bit. Since we live in the same town, we get together every once in a while and we chat about affiliate marketing. The cool thing is Christy actually does her own thing. She has an agency, a marketing agency, and she's looking to get into affiliate marketing a little bit more. She launched a site just a few months ago, and she's getting a tiny amount of organic traffic. But the super cool thing, unlike me, Christy knows how to use Pinterest. So she didn't know how to use Pinterest before she got into affiliate marketing or niche sites or anything like that. But she's been able to get quite a bit of traffic in a short amount of time. And it's super impressive considering she didn't even know like the first thing about scheduling Pinterest posts or pinning, or to be honest, I don't even know the terminology. I actually learned a lot in this interview, and I'll probably be bugging Christy a little bit to get more information about how I can take advantage of some Pinterest traffic as well. We talked mostly about affiliate marketing and niche sites and keywords and all that fun stuff, of course. However, we also talk about moving to Montana, living in Bozeman, and some of the details around that. So I think a lot of people ask me about that anyway, but just curious if you're interested in that sort of thing. Shoot me a comment, leave a comment, somehow get in touch with me. Let me know that you enjoyed some of these more like lifestyle-oriented details. And if you do, that's good, because part of the reason I'm doing the podcast is I feel like I have a little bit more freedom to digress a bit and just go off on a tangent because there's a little bit more time, or it feels like there's more time. At least the way I listen to podcasts, it's like I got all the time in the world. If I need to listen to a 2 or 3 hour long podcast, this is not going to be that long. But if I want to listen to a very long podcast, I can just, queue it up and listen to it over a few days. And I used to do that all the time. So let me know what you think about some of these other topics that we bring up. Really curious to hear your impression. All right, I'm going to send it over to the interview. But at the end, I have another question for you. So be sure to stick around after the interview to hear my question. Welcome.
Thanks.
All right. I'm sitting here with Christy, who's a student in Five Figure Niche Site. And thanks for joining me today. We happen to live both in Bozeman. So we get together every once in a while and just chat. So we're chatting today. How are you?
Doing pretty well. It's the middle of our very, very long winter. So,
but it's been like surprisingly warm.
Okay. Yeah. My tolerance is increased.
Yeah. And it's like, I usually have like chains on my truck,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And, so you drove a truck.
I drove my truck too. Yeah.
Nice. It's 4-wheel drive though, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
you could actually get around. So mine's 2-wheel drive. So I have to put in like sandbags, which you maybe have to do also, but then I have to put chains because basically it's like undrivable once it gets a little,
mine's kind of a beast, not to truck compare, but
yeah. Well, mine's from the South. So we didn't
true. Mine's from Canada. So
it's built for this.
It's built tough. Yeah.
Okay. So most people don't know who you are. Mm-hmm. So can you just give us a little intro?
Yeah. So I moved here to Bozeman probably 3 years ago by now. I run a creative agency as my full-time gig and started doing this on the side after that. And that's how we met, of course. But for the most part, I'm kind of a marketer by trade and a writer. And we can talk about that a little bit later. But just kind of trying this out on the side.
Cool. So you have your own agency?
I do. Yep. So I've been running my own creative marketing agency for about 4 years, and it's all virtual though. So everyone works from home, and that's how I was able to move out here. So
super cool. And it sounds like we moved here like around the same time. So around
I think
2015.
so. Yeah.
Okay.
And I imagine we moved here kind of for some of the same reasons.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so what was the big draw for you?
Well, for me, it was just I'd been coming out on vacation for a while and just wanted a different lifestyle. I'd been doing the corporate gig for a decade at the same tech company, and that was great and got a lot of experience. But just, at that time in my life, wanted to do something different and have some flexibility and be somewhere beautiful. And
right.
I feel like we were kind of on the same page about that one.
Yeah. But well, you must ski and do all the winter activities, right?
Doug, I don't do any of those activities.
Right.
No.
So I don't we don't do any of that either.
Yeah.
So it's slightly embarrassing to have to tell people, but it's like, hey, you know what? Like
I found it really comforting when neither of us were going to go hiking. Like to me, that was like, okay, we can be friends because he's not going to make me go hiking. So it was a big moment for me.
Yeah. Although I like hiking every now and then, but it's yeah. So anyway, not in the winter so much. That's snowshoeing. So, okay. So you had a corporate career. Can you tell us a little bit about like what you did back there?
Yeah. So I started right out of college. I went to school for marketing. And so I got myself a marketing job through what was at the time like a 2-year entrepreneurial fellowship. So they put you with a startup company. So you got to kind of have the startup experience and then stay on if you wanted to as it grew. And I ended up staying for 10 years. So definitely went from startup to full corporate and being actually acquired. So did that whole journey. And while I was there, I did just kind of all the things, which is the story of my life. But did a lot of writing. So I've always been a writer. Managed a design team. I did sales support. I did events. And then the last couple of years, I did internal marketing. So anything that was for employees.
Nice.
So kind of ran the gamut.
Cool. And then it sounds like you managed a decent number of people along the way. Yep.
Did some management. It was never, the thing that I loved the most. I loved the people, but, I think my favorite jobs were just making new things and doing project-based work. And
right.
I did get to manage a lot of agencies, freelancers. So that has turned out to be really key for me because that's what I do now. So,
okay, cool. And I'm going to just skip ahead. We'll come back to more stories and everything. But you are a student in the 5-Figure Niche Site course, and you have a site, and we're going to talk about some of those details. So just letting everyone know, we're going to dig in. So a couple interesting things, which again, we're meander around this whole conversation. So your site is a few months old. Can you give us some of the stats? Like as far as traffic, number of posts, some details.
Yeah. So I started the site. I took a week off of work to start it actually over my birthday. Happy birthday. The first week of October. So it's been going for 3.5 months ish. I'll have, I think, 30 posts by the end of the month. Some of them are guest posts. Some of them are posts that I've written. Current site traffic, last I looked yesterday, was around 3,500 a month visits. A lot of that is from social traffic. So I'm doing a lot on Pinterest just because my niche is pretty visual. So trying to take advantage of that. And then my other traffic sources are obviously, more so organic Google. But a lot of Pinterest traffic. And then, let's see, other things that so KGR, I guess we should talk about too. So all of my posts are KGR posts with the exception of like a couple of bigger kind of pillar posts. So definitely trying to, got that from the site and makes a lot of sense to me. We might come back to KGR later on why that makes a difference, but trying to kind of follow the best practices with all of my posts.
How long are sorry to interrupt. How long are the posts?
Well, that's what I was going to say. So as a writer, it's hard to write tiny posts. So I think a lot of people are intimidated by trying to get to at least 1,500 words, which is where you should be for Google to want to, rank your copy. For me, most of my posts are usually above 3,000 words. So trying to do really meaty content for everything.
Right.
So yeah, it takes a long time. So.
And you do a lot of the writing yourself, right?
I do a lot of writing myself because my niche is something that I'm like personally passionate about and educated in. So I can do that. I'm also starting to get into more guest posting in kind of a interesting way that we can talk about.
Okay.
But yeah, so I would say probably 2/3 content mine for now and 1/3 probably guests.
Okay. And then is it accurate? Like if you have because you have some people writing, like a couple people writing things for you, right? But even then you edit it, you can't keep your hands off it, right?
I can't. Yeah. So I edit everything. I put it all into WordPress. I'm familiar with WordPress just because of the agency that I run. So I can also do a lot of the tech side myself, a lot of the site branding, all of that I can do myself, which is fun.
Right.
For me, it's just one big fun project to work on. So that's what I like.
Cool. And teasing you, of course, but the point is the content's good. So even if you have it written by a qualified person or whatever, you still get in there and make sure it's what you want to say and the voice is proper. That is it's a trend that I hear from several people that have been able to get a decent amount of traffic in a short time. And they stay on top of the content and make sure it's congruent and written well.
Well, and for me, it's a little bit, a lot of the times I think for niche sites, you don't expect people to come back, right? You expect them to Google, find an article, take action on it, and that's it. What I'm trying to build is a little bit more on the authority side of things. So I want to kind of build more of a community around it and have it be a consistent place that people can come back to. So I think having content that is well written and feels like it's from the same brand, the same site is going to be important, 2 years from now. So.
Gotcha. All right. So for the social traffic, is the majority of it coming from Pinterest?
Yeah. So Pinterest has been a learning curve for me. It's not something that I actually do for my current business. So that's all new. But the big turning point, I think, for me was realizing that Pinterest is a search engine, which I just had never thought about. So as opposed to, like an Instagram, that's great for just kind of building your general brand if you want to. But Pinterest is really, you can target keywords just like you can with Google. So once I realized that, I was like, I should be there.
Right.
I should be there. My niche is, image centric. So yeah, this means I can target the same kind of keywords I am with the content.
Gotcha. And you know what, not everyone, people just keep telling me over and over again, it's a search engine, it's not social. And I'm like, I guess so. And it's funny, I think it was shortly after I moved here. So a few years ago, I was like, I need to get going on some Pinterest. And then like most things, it's like,
right.
I didn't do it. And now it's like, if I would have like put time in. But I think the thing that concerns me that I've heard, you can tell me if it's accurate or not. In like social channels, Pinterest may fall into this category. You have to remain active, right? So, if you did a bunch of stuff for 3 months and then you stopped, you would potentially like plateau, then decline. Okay.
Yep. So one of the things I had to do kind of in a hurry was I decided to set up, we're both project managers. So we kind of like systems and processes. So I got onto Tailwind, which is a scheduling app for social. And it does Instagram and Pinterest, which I was like, great, those are the two that I need. That's perfect. So I now try to schedule basically a month in advance of social posts on Pinterest and Instagram. But Pinterest more so because then I can do all the keyword research at once, because the keywords are a little different on Pinterest. So just because you targeted one on Google, you have to kind of do some manual checking on Pinterest and see what people are searching for on there. So, but I try to do it all together as much as I can and then set it and forget it for a month.
Cool. And can you do more than a month at a time?
You can.
Okay. Is there like a limit or?
There's not. It's just as much as I can get to on a Friday when I dedicate time to this. So.
And is it something like once you, let's say you get the couple months out, like you have a couple months of history or whatever, can you just like, can you reuse it? That's what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah. So Tailwind is cool because it actually has these things called smart loops. So you can set up a smart loop of your highest performing pins and it can repin them at the optimized times for your audience. So the longer you use it and the more pins you have, the more data gathers, obviously. And then you can set up some of these smart loops to kind of reactivate posts that you've already done from, say, 2 years ago.
Okay.
If it's a good, article that's performing well, you can add it and say, hey, let's get this out there more. So.
Gotcha. How much does Tailwind cost?
I want to say it was maybe like $10 a month. Don't quote me on that, but it was not astronomical.
Okay.
So it was worth it to me not to have to manually go in and do that because that was just taking up a ton of time.
Right. And then do you have to write like some little, I don't know anything about Pinterest, little description about it? And then,
yep. Okay. And you can do hashtags and keywords and all of that. The other cool thing I learned about Pinterest was that Pinterest can actually read the text on your images. So using keyword-rich text within the image itself is actually good, which things like Instagram doesn't do that. So.
Interesting. Okay, so I learned a lot. Maybe I need to get my act together on
as long as Pinterest. You consolidate it. If you try to do it all manually, it's too much of a time suck.
Right. And I think, okay, and let me back up again. So on how much traffic like per day are you getting from Pinterest? Do you have like a handle?
I feel like my Pinterest traffic in general was about 75% of what I'm getting. Okay. If I'm doing 3,500 visits a month, I will let you do that math.
Okay, so that's about 100 a day, so about 75?
Probably.
Okay. All
and
right.
I mean, I just started, so the site was started in October. I just started Pinterest probably 3 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
So that's not been running for 3 months. That's just immediately.
Okay. And I think, that's pretty impressive because I've been working with another person that started their site around the same time. They're getting, 10 or 15 visitors a day on a good day from Google. And and you're getting that as well. I mean, you're getting more than that.
Well, and this is something that we chatted about early on when I started doing the social stuff because, the conversion rate is usually lower on social, I think. But, one of my questions was, is this still valuable? So I don't know if you want to talk about a little about that, but that was something I really wondered about because I was like, okay, so it's working. It's driving traffic, but like, is it good traffic? Does Google like that?
Yeah. So, let's talk about it. I think any traffic is probably going to be good, assuming they're like there for the right reason. Like they're interested in the topic. What the traffic you don't want is like someone is, trying to learn about, dogs. Georgie, I'm looking at Georgie right now. Someone's trying to learn about dogs, and then they end up on a cat site. That's that's wrong. That's
that is wrong on so many levels.
So if they are interested in dogs, they end up. So that's good. And early on with your site, like I mean, you're not going to get much traffic. So if you can get traffic from wherever, that's great. Now the anecdotal evidence, a couple of posts that I've had went viral on Pinterest and their rankings went up. Now, caveat is I was also link building and doing other stuff and it was a really good piece of content. So everything works together, I think. And I believe, if you have traffic coming from wherever the source is, right? Whatever social media, even if it's a blog comment, like if it's a no follow link and traffic's coming through it, Google's like, oh, like people are going to that content. That seems interesting. So,
well, and same anecdotal, but I did notice that, since the site's been up for 3 months, I've only been doing Pinterest for maybe 3 weeks. But my average page ranking is now at about 30, 31. Whereas before that, it was probably, 100 and then 75. So like, I feel like that's really picked up.
Cool.
obviously some of that is it's another month old,
Right.
which is great. But I think that probably the social has only helped kind of make it more legitimate in Google's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one thing I've noticed that was good.
Okay, cool. And I noticed for one of my sites, it gets a decent amount of traffic, I would say. And there's like some traffic coming from Pinterest, like naturally.
Right.
I think at one point I was like, let's at least get some Pinterest type images in there. So I think some people are naturally finding
people are
it.
just sharing it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if I actually, so we'll talk after this, maybe you could help me out and we could figure out how to make it work for my site. Cause I imagine I could probably get, there's just a shitload of content that I have. And a lot of it does rank well. The content's good enough. So I imagine could probably get a few hundred visitors a day.
Well, and I think the key is to do it for the right articles. If you have a ton, right? For me, with 30 posts, I can do Pinterest for all of them. No big deal. If you have a site that's years old and you have hundreds of posts, you know, Pinterest is great for like the lists. So 10 best whatevers, 5 best 5 things you never, you know, that kind of stuff is really big on Pinterest. So, you know, it's definitely somewhere that like product focused posts are good, and posts that are just kind of those list posts do pretty well. So
interesting. Okay, cool. I learned a lot there. So that was good. So let's shift gears abruptly and transition it back to the agency. Yeah. So you had the corporate gig. Did you quit? Or you were like, hey.
Well, we got acquired.
Okay.
And then I waited about a year and I did my own thing on the side for a year, basically to make sure I wouldn't starve to death. So I kind of tested the concept for a year. Does that sound familiar? And so I had about a year overlap. And then I decided that I wanted to move here because I've been coming out on vacation. And I threw out a little, you know, would I be able to work from home in the middle of Montana? And they obviously don't have an office here. So they were like, yeah. I was like, great. Okay, that's fine. By that point, I'd kind of already committed in my mind to moving. So
yeah, that is remarkably similar. So my story is a little bit different, but my wife and I were like, I guess people call it slow travel. I don't know. I heard someone say it and then I picked it up.
Slow travel with Brody.
Yep. My wife and I were traveling and we were like, if we're driving all the way to Montana from Atlanta, then we should stay for a while. So we stayed for 3 months. We sold our place before we left.
That's a kiss of death right there. You can't stay for 3 weeks and not want to move here.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it was that summer, you probably remember, it was a very nice summer. And we were here in the summer. So there was a little snow in the mountains, but it was awesome.
Yeah, you were done for.
And the place we rented, like a townhouse, we could look out the window and see the mountains, which you can see the mountains. It's
360 mountains, to be clear.
And like, you know, you're from a place where the weather is a little cooler.
There are no mountains.
Yeah, there's no mountains, but at least you were acclimated. Like your blood is used to the
had cold
cooler.
winters. Yeah.
But from Atlanta, we're like, hopefully we can make it. We made it through a winter,
and we don't sweeten our tea up here either. So you must have really struggled.
Well, you know, I was never that big on sweet tea.
Good. That's why we're friends.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, we ended up here, and my company wasn't so crazy about it either. I think you took a more like professional and rational approach to it. But I was a little more abrupt. I was a squeaky wheel at that point anyway. So
I think once you know that you want to make a transition, it's really hard to pretend you don't know that. So it's, you know, I think for a lot of niche site people as well, it's like, once you know that you want a different kind of lifestyle, you can't unknow that.
Right.
So you kind of want to figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah.
So
totally.
I can relate.
So, and the reason why I wanted to talk about the agency more is like, that seems like an approach that a lot of people may take. They're like, as long as I'm working for myself, well, I don't care. I mean, you're calling the shots. Like you're the owner and you're the CEO and all this stuff. Right. So why are you trying to like transition from there?
Yeah.
Or are you trying? Because I put words in your mouth there.
Yeah.
So.
So for me, probably every 2 years at my old company, I would switch jobs internally because I didn't leave the company. But I like projects, right? And I like new stuff. And for me, after a couple of years, you're doing more management than you are, creative and things like that. And that's okay. That's kind of how it's supposed to work. But I really like having something new to dig my teeth into.
Mm-hmm.
And, I may keep the agency, right? I've built something that's really successful and I love the people and that's great. But, kind of the longer that I live here, the more I care about lifestyle and kind of quality of life. And like that was a huge leap for me of having a better quality life than I did for a long time when my life was my job.
Right.
But now like you're kind of always looking for the next step that you could take. So how could I get more balance in my life? How could I do more of the things that I like? While still not starving to death, obviously.
Right.
So it's a consideration.
Right. So
yeah. I think it'll be more just kind of shifting how that is.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I want just something different to work on also. My brain kind of needs it.
Yeah. Totally understand, like to learn something new.
Just totally new.
And it's a good combination because you have like the writing background, right. You have really strong marketing background, project management, like you did the management. So you have like a wide range that it's kind of hard to put that together. Like if you were planning on doing that, you couldn't actually do it.
Well, I think like a few times after I met with you, I think I might have even written you like, here's kind of my why of why I'm doing this. And I had also written at home, because I'm a writer and I think on the page, like reasons why this will work before I knew anything about it. Right. So for me, I needed to be like, you know what, like I have these pieces. I write, I do design, I'm comfortable on the web. I can project manage, I'm self-motivated, like these kind of pieces. And they all seem to line up really well with running a niche site. So just made me feel a little bit better about the decision.
Good. Well, and how'd you find me?
Yeah. So that was weird. I mean, I think it's weird that you live in the same town I do in the middle of Montana. That's weird. But the first time I think I heard about you was my friend actually runs a podcast here in town and she interviewed you. But it was probably a couple of months before that there was another niche site person that they interviewed. And I saved her podcast because I was like, I need to listen to this. I know I need to. I cannot right now.
Right.
Like I just was not in the right mind space to do it. So I was like, oh, that's great that you're making all that money and that's fantastic for you. And that's great. And right now I need to put out these fires and do the things.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until like a couple of months later that I listened to it and I was like, okay, that is super interesting. And then like the next week, your podcast came out with them and I was like, okay. And then I assumed that you were a guest podcaster from somewhere else because that's what most of the people were. And then I looked into it and I was like, he lives right here. What are the chances?
Yeah.
So that was exciting.
And you can mention the podcast and the other people, by the way.
Oh, yeah. So it was called Beautifully Equipped. And it's run by a group of 3 ladies that are all entrepreneurial boss ladies here in Bozeman, which is awesome. So listen to them if you haven't already. They're great.
And I'm not 100% sure, but it's the demographic primarily is women.
Yep.
Somehow I talked my way into being a guest.
I know.
Which is
I don't know how you did it.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if they've interviewed any other males, but I maybe
rare.
Yeah. So they're not many.
Yeah.
So
you were an exception, Doug.
Yep. So great podcast. You should check it out.
Yep.
A lot of interesting stuff. And let's see. And who was the other affiliate marketer that you?
Yeah. So she runs the Making Sense of Sense website. So it's super different. It's all finance. So it wasn't something that like was a personal topic interest of mine. So I probably never would have found her. But her niche site kind of element was interesting. And that's what she was talking a lot about. And I looked and I just like, it was really interesting, I guess, to see her do that. Now, finance is totally different, obviously. But she built it up from nothing. And I really like to see stories like that where it feels like what you're doing, right? Because everybody's building something from nothing.
Right.
So it's nice not to be like, here are all the pretty pieces.
Right.
But to have someone be like, first couple of years, pretty tough.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And it seems like it's not working.
It's real. So.
And I you know what? I haven't listened to her episode, but I need to check it out based on what you mentioned. Do you get into the financial independence like stuff at all? Or?
I really have never. What I liked about her that she does is she posts income reports every month, which is interesting, which actually inspired one of the things I'm going to be doing starting this month, which is posting monthly expense reports for my niche. So what I spend on that hobby, because a lot of people want to know, like, what does this cost? And no one really talks about it. Yeah. So for her, it was income because that's, personal finance related, and that's great. For me, it's the cost of doing a hobby. So I'm just going to try it and be transparent about it. And it's good for me to be minding those pennies anyway, a little bit closer. So yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting. So let's see.
Well, and she has a class too. So she was the first one that I signed up for because I hadn't heard your podcast yet. And she runs a class called Making Sense of Affiliate Marketing. So that was the first one that I knew of. And then when your podcast came out, and I looked up your website, you had a class too, and I was down for that. So
cool. So now that you're a few months in and you've published a decent amount of content, like what has been surprising, basically? What's different than you thought?
Yeah. Just the amount of time it takes I feel like it's always the case, right? Whatever you're starting, it takes more time than you think.
Yeah.
But I kind of went in thinking, hey, I'm a writer. I know the topic really well. This is going to be super fast. And then you realize that your personality stays the same. So if you're an A++, then you got to write 3,000 words every time, and it takes a long time, and you're doing research and all of that. So for me, I think it was just the time investment was a lot more than I thought. The flip side of that being, I'm really glad I picked a niche that I care about personally. Right. So I know that you can do it differently, right? You can just pick a topic and that's fine, especially if you're outsourcing most of the content. But I think if you're writing it yourself, you kind of got to care about it because otherwise it'll get old real quick. It's a lot of time.
Boring. Yeah. And then if you have, you're a writer, if you're interested in it, you can write this stuff. Great. But there's another pocket of folks that like they hire someone, they're not writers. Right. Maybe English is not their first language. They don't know the topic either. So they get back garbage and they don't know it. So I'll go and audit their site and then it just looks like a train wreck. It's just a mess.
Well, and the difference I think there for me at least, and we talked about this even the first time we met was, I'm looking to build things that last. So like you always say, like if you want money right now, you should go get a job and have someone pay you.
Right.
But if you want to kind of build out a lifestyle and build out a different income stream, like that's going to take some time and you have to put in the work for a couple of years probably to see the return. And so for me, that's kind of how I'm approaching it, right? I don't want to throw a bunch of junk out there. I want to build a site that I care about and I'm proud of and that people want to return to as kind of an authority site. So,
okay, cool.
Just a different focus, I guess.
And then are there some things that are exactly like how you thought it was going to be?
Yeah. I mean, I've built a lot of websites, so, I know what that takes. I know how to brand and create a logo and a tagline and things that I really love. So for me, that's kind of part of the motivation is you learn the pieces that you really like. And yeah, you shouldn't spend 40 hours on your template. Like, I know it's true. Like, don't do that. But if you can spend 10 hours on your brand because you love brand and you want to build something that you're super proud of and that motivates you every time you go on the site, then that's worth the 10 hours. So for me, it's kind of just knowing what those pieces are that every time I look at that element, I'm like, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I like it. So.
Yeah. There's something to, you could figure, I mean, you know what motivates you too, like us as individuals.
Right.
So, you know, you got to take that into account. You don't want to work on something that you like really, really hate.
Right.
And if you can get energized and more pumped up about the project by spending more time on something.
Well, and there will be pieces that you don't like. So I feel like it's important to have at least some things that you routinely like about it, right? Because sometimes you're going to have to deal with tech or switch your hosting or whatever, right? And you're going to be like, this is not why I started this.
Yeah, totally.
But it's just one of the things. So,
yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll see if I can pause this. Hey, it's Doug here, and just wanted to let you know that if you want to get my templates and all the process stuff that we're talking about, you can go to nichesiteproject.com and click on the green button. You just enter your name and email address, and then I send you an email with a link to all the goodies. I'll also put a link in the show notes if you're like on your phone or whatever, but just remember nichesiteproject.com. You can go there, check out all the stuff. All right, and we're back. We just refreshed our tea.
Yep.
And we were looking at pictures of I guess birds of prey, raptors. Yep. So we were talking about like bald eagles and ospreys and other
this
large
place is
birds.
the coolest.
So like do you remember like the first couple of times you saw eagles out in the wild?
Yeah. I mean, I think I saw one on my first trip here even, because I came out originally for yoga retreats of all things. So I was driving out like an hour east of here, and there was one that came down on the road, like on the highway, and grabbed something. And I was just like, what? What is happening? This place is ridiculous.
They're just around. Yeah.
It was, yeah. You always see something different here.
It's crazy. And I remember it was just a couple weeks ago, we were driving over to Missoula.
Oh, huh.
And I guess you kind of go up on a plateau or something. Because you could tell it like got much colder up there. It dropped by like maybe 15 degrees.
The terrain changes a lot on the way to Missoula.
Very interesting.
Strange.
And like it looked like a Christmas scene, right? And it was actually in December. But all the trees were like covered with a frost of ice or whatever. And there was that stretch, that plateau. We saw like 10 eagles in each direction. It was super cool. They're huge. You can see their
huge. They're
bald
huge.
heads it's a good look.
Did it make you feel at home? Yeah, I thought so.
So it's pretty cool. All right, getting back into it, we were just talking about like outreach and the early days with your site. A lot of times, like you're not going to get a lot of traffic from Google. And I mentioned a few ways to do outreach: blog commenting, just emailing people, trying to guest post, all that stuff. But because you're a good marketer and you think you have a different frame than a lot of people would use to think about outreach. So you came up with some cool ideas that I've never heard of. Do you want to tell us about a couple?
Yeah. Well, the one thing I did early on was, when I was following your course, I did kind of the content section first. And then I went and did my content. And then I waited to listen to the outreach portion until I was like ready to do that, because I know if I put it in my brain, that's all I'm going to want to do. So I waited until I had like a good start on the content. And then you had always said like, get through kind of a content sprint and then stop and do outreach and then do another content sprint and then stop and do outreach. So I was like, this seems like a good time. But like what I had noticed in my niche was that there's a lot of, since I'm trying to build more of an authority site because I care about the topic and, it's also what I'm interested in. A lot of the people in my niche are huge on YouTube. I have not started a vlog yet, maybe in the future, kind of freaks me out. But there's a lot of vloggers in my niche that are really, really good that I've personally followed for years. So some of the outreach that I wanted to do was actually to vloggers, because often they don't have websites. They don't have places that they can also write. So they don't necessarily have an outlet for that. And sometimes they have more that they want to talk about than what they're able to cover on a vlog. So the very first outreach that I did was actually to a really big vlogger that I had followed for years, and got her to come on and do 10 vlogs about topics that she cares about, I care about, that actually add value to the site. So for me, I would rather go and do kind of some of those one-off contacts than do, a bunch of blog contenting, which does work. But what I kind of want is like the long-term relationships, because it's a topic we both care about and it gives them a valuable space to share other thoughts. So I'm doing a lot more outreach with vloggers, which led me to also then create kind of like a media guide, because that's something that I follow personally for my niche. I created kind of like a guide to the best vloggers to follow, and now I'm doing the best podcasters to follow. And then just reaching out to those folks and telling them, the truth of, hey, I've been following you for years and your content has been super helpful to me. So I featured you here, and then asking some of them if they want to contribute, if they don't have a place to kind of blog and share their thoughts, then that's a good spot for them. So
nice. I really like the fact that you approached a vlogger. And how many like subscribers? Just bought like tens of thousands of subscribers, right?
Probably 100,000 overall their channels.
Okay. So like when you think about that, it's like, why did she talk to you? Do you think it was your approach? Did you know her beforehand? Like, how did you like, I
didn't know her personally, but the thing is, I'm not really reaching out to anyone that I haven't personally followed. So when I write someone, it's super authentic because I actually do follow their journey. I know about what they're doing. I know about, kind of where they are in their journey. So for me, it's a little easier to reach out because I'm not just asking for things. In fact, sometimes I'm not asking for anything, right? I'm just saying, hey, I love what you're doing and I featured you here, right? And if you have kind of a good rapport when we reply, then awesome. Cool. But for me, it's you just can't reach out to people and be like, hey, here's what I need from you.
Right.
Yeah, no one wants that email.
And I think, well, I'm in.
You probably get those emails and you don't want them.
Right. I was going to say in the marketing space, like everything gets abused pretty badly. But like if you're in a space where maybe there's not a lot of people, right? Well, let's just say, for example, it was a very crowded niche on the blog side, and a lot of people were sending emails, which
pretty crowded.
But then to go to the different channel, like far fewer people, although there's still a lot of people that contact people with YouTube channels, because I get a ton of emails also from that. But it's fewer. The asks are different. So if you're, a lot of times the pitch may be like, hey, do you want to review? So I'm a bald male and I've gotten like pitches for like makeup and stuff. And I'm like, do you realize the demographics like completely
do they know that you
wrong?
Usually wear hats? The fact that you're not wearing a hat right now is super weird.
And it's like, I think I even replied back. I'm like, this is like not a good match at all, right? Because I was just curious, like, how did that happen? How did that happen? And they're like, we just want to get the word out. And I was like,
so I had someone reach out to me on Instagram, which is the first time because my Instagram channel is still super small. Like I just started it and I'm just building it up because I want it to be authentic, and that just takes longer. But someone reached out with what seemed like maybe unauthentic, like, hey, we want to partner with you on this whatever product. So I just reached out a little bit, and you could tell like right away, like you just blanket sent this to probably 100 accounts. Like, yeah, I'm not going to buy your thing and then talk about it. That's just not a good ask, right?
No.
So like I would much rather reach out to someone and be like, here's what I love about your story. I've been following you for a long time. Here's something of value that I wanted to do to promote what you're doing, right? And that's the biggest thing.
Right.
So that's worked for me so far.
And similar.
Because it feels better. So.
And it actually is helping the other person and all that stuff. So, and I was able to, for Niche Site Project in a marketing sense, I reached out to an Instagrammer that I think she has something like 75,000 followers in the business, like marketing space. And I sent her a cold email. Right. And she was like, sure, I'll do Elise Dharma. So she's on the channel. She was a digital nomad, blah, blah, blah. She'll actually be on another one of the podcast episodes. But the point is, like even while we were talking in the interview, she was like, the cold email you sent me was great, which we could share that at some point, and I'll put a link in the show notes and everything. But it was like an authentic thing. It was clear.
Because you can't, those people spent years of blood, sweat, and tears building up what they have, and you can't just say, hey, I want to borrow everything that you built. Like, this is clearly for me. Even if I never got any traffic from them, like, I want their voice on the site.
Right.
Priority one. So.
Yeah. And then as you like work your way up, then you can use the social proof to get other people on. So you've been able to like parlay that. Is that the right? Parlay it up.
And just, because if one person creates quality content, then that gives you a good opportunity to go to someone else and say, hey, they're really enjoying this experience. Do you also want to share, something that you're interested in? Because so far, every one of the people that I reached out to have been thanking me for the opportunity. And they, one of them blogged about how much she's enjoying doing it. And I was like, that's what I want. Like, if it's not a good experience for you as well, then you shouldn't be doing it. Right. Like, I need to be a good quote unquote manager that, you being happy and enjoying it is important to me. So,
yeah, cool. And that's, again, it's like important to like make it enjoyable. Then you get the social proof, and then more like they'll come back and they'll talk with you more. And it's a good cycle. And then you can at that point ask them, right? Is there anyone you think I should talk to that are your peers? And then you get a warm intro, like.
Well, and because it's, the kind of niche where if you have something you're interested in and it's, there's a big presence on social in your niche, and people want to share and they want to help each other. And that's just a nice niche to be in.
Okay. Are there any other areas, like in the outreach zone where you're like, hey, this is sort of something I came up with on my own?
Well, I had listened to, I think it was Dave that you had interviewed when I was watching some of the early YouTube videos. And I heard just a little mention of like a scholarship program or something. And I didn't honestly know what that was that he was talking about at the time. So in my mind, when I was thinking about outreach, I was like, oh, well, like colleges. Yeah. Like there's a lot of college kids involved in this niche. So maybe they would like to share what they're doing and their experience. So I got together like a list of probably about 50 colleges. And instead of doing like a traditional scholarship, I did more of an outreach of, hey, do you want to nominate someone who would be good for a profile? Because again, like that's just the kind of, demographic that wants to share on social, like sharing on social, like wants to have a place to express what they're doing. And that's good quality content that people want to read about. I would want to read about it. So reaching out currently to about 50 schools and trying to get, I would say I'd be happy if there were at least like 10 profiles probably at the end. And then just offering like a couple $100 of kind of like fun spending cash, not an official scholarship. But then the other thing that I want to do, hopefully, is if some of those people reply and I get like good writing from them, then that's someone in a niche that I could have potentially do more guest posts. Right. So I'm also kind of just keeping an eye out for, okay, who are good writers that I could trust with content. So
cool.
2 birds, 1 stone, maybe.
So a couple things to point out, because I'm sure some people are like yelling at their screen or headphones. So I think it was Dave Fox for the interview that you watched. And he did like a scholarship program, outreach program, which I don't recommend at this point in time. And that's not what you were talking about. But that was one of those things that was abused. So basically someone would set up a scholarship on their site. These used to be like valid and real. And then they would reach out to hundreds or thousands of schools to be listed on their scholarship
to try to get like the EDU links or something.
Yep, to get EDU links, which you can readily do. I think you could probably still pull it off. But if you go take a look at some of those pages, they're filled with like weird scholarships. So I think if you do it and you pay it out and all that stuff, it's fine. At this
but if
point,
everyone's doing it,
yeah, it lower. And in fact, there was a series of I guess manual penalties from Google on this from the spam team, and a bunch of sites that had those kind of links were impacted. There were other things. It's unclear exactly what it was, but it seemed like a lot of those sites, the word on the street was from the scholarship program area. So you're not talking about that. You're getting real, you're getting input from like the.
I mean, it's like a 3-phase process to get to a profile. So
right, and the profile wouldn't necessarily get a link back, but the person, may share it on social, and the people on whoever is associated with the
and it ties into the core of my niche and what my site is about within the niche, which helps. But I think what you just find is doing a kind of a level up of outreach where it is really personal takes way longer. Right. I can't set up a listserv of colleges and just blast something out. That was probably 2 weeks of finding the right contacts and narrowing down what schools. And that's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get to the point where someone might say yes. But again, the hope is that you're building something that you're going to really like in 5 years, 10 years. So.
And there was some second point that I was going to make, but I don't remember what it is. So. I don't know. Well, you were talking about hiring them to do some writing afterwards or something. Okay. Yeah.
That's cool. Just because, it's hard. One of the questions I think I had for you early on even was, what do you do when you just can't hire anyone to write your niche? Because you have to be an expert on it. So that's one of those things where you're like, well, how do I find those people?
Yeah.
So I haven't figured out that equation yet by any means. I'm still doing most of it myself. Because I want people who know it. Right. So that's where I'm just well, if I do this cool thing in outreach, then maybe I'll develop a relationship with someone that turns into a consistent writer. So you never know.
Good idea. Okay. So when I was thinking back when we first met, we went to some coffee shop, and
your first time at the Daily.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
The Daily Coffee Bar over there. And you had
pastries. Yes, I did.
Yeah, you had pastries.
I did have pastries.
And I can't remember. I think I already ate that morning or something, even though you were the pastries are really good. I try and stay away from sweets because basically I'll eat the whole.
No, don't stay away. It's not, no.
So you showed up with some crazy list of questions, right? You printed out.
I did.
You sent me an email with 4 pages of notes. I sent you a short bullet list.
Were you terrified, Doug?
And then, I was I'm glad you prepared so much. I could ask you anything. We have your history, your transcript here. I see you got good grades in school.
I had professor parents, Doug. I do all the homework.
So you did all the homework, and when we first met, you weren't in the course yet.
No, I hadn't committed to doing any of it.
But somehow you had watched a ton of videos, read a lot of stuff. So you kind of had you somehow put together a blueprint. Tell me about that. Just what happened?
Well, I mean, it's kind of the same thing as when I do outreach, where I felt there's an actual expert who lives in my town. What are the chances of that? So I don't want to waste his time asking him a whole bunch of questions that I could have already figured out the answers to by myself. So that's just always something I try not to do, right? Everyone's time is valuable. So if I could readily find the answer, I should have done that already. It's kind of how I see it. And so I want to show up with valuable questions. Right. And if I can't put in 10 minutes of Googling first, it's probably not the right question. Mm-hmm. So, but for me, before I reached out to you, I had already been kind of noodling this and listening to Michelle's podcast and doing all of that, and was trying to figure out okay, I feel I know what niche I would want generally, not how I'd want to structure it exactly, but just based on what I like to do, that would be really fun. But then I wanted to make just kind of a list of, hey, if I'm talking about doing something long-term, is there enough to write about? I don't know. You just kind of want to scope it out beforehand. So that's where I got a little carried away. And I just started keeping notes on my phone. right? Where I would just write down like topic after topic after topic that I could blog about. And then it got to be like 600 things, I think, by the time I met you, which is a bit much.
I thought so.
Yeah, it was a lot. So, but it just kind of justified to me like, yeah, you could do this for a long time. Like there's plenty to talk about. But what I didn't know and what I started asking you that day was like, how do you get from a list of 600 just general topics that aren't based on anything? You know, they're not based on any like Google data. How do you narrow that down? So that's why I really liked talking to you, because I just like heard of KGR, but I didn't know what it was. So like if you want to talk about that a little bit, like that was pretty transformative for me.
So it's the keyword golden ratio for the people that haven't heard. And I think by the time this episode is going to come out, I will have published like 2 episodes on the topic. If you're unfamiliar though, if this is your first episode,
go to Doug's YouTube.
Yeah, it's on. If you just Google keyword golden ratio, you should find like mostly my stuff. Basically, it's a data-driven way to find keywords that are generally underserved. So
And what do you mean by underserved? That was new to me as well.
And loose definition, I guess. But basically, there are more people searching for it each month than there are like pages on the internet covering the topic, just in general. And if it's hard to explain. There's an advanced Google search, so it's all in title, whatever the search phrase
that
is.
That was new to me too.
And then you divide that by the search volume.
Yep.
So you're looking for something under 0.25 and the search volume should be under 250. And it just kind of, people challenge me on the formula often. Just stick to the formula.
It's not a science.
Yeah.
It's a guideline.
And it works pretty well, right? So I've been using it for a couple of years. A lot of other people use it. It works well at scale. So I would say at least 20 articles. And then you're going to have some success. If you just do 2, you may or may not see it work. And I hear from people and they're like, well, I published 3 articles and it's been, 6.5 hours. Like, why isn't this working? Anyway, the KGR was a good way to help prioritize it. And you did it the right way. Because that
was where I was stuck.
Right. Because you had the list of ideas. Yeah. You were sort of newer to keyword research. So you did it the right way. Perfect. And you weren't like some people they know too much already, right? So they can't come up with ideas, but you were just like brainstorming. So you came up with a bunch of ideas and then I was like, well, what did I say? I have no idea.
Well, I mean, I was just like, what do I do now? Right? Like I have all this stuff, which makes it seem like this would be a really good niche. But if I hadn't had like Coffee with You and the course and like KGR, I would have just written a ton of articles that like that would never rank. Right. Like they just didn't have a chance of ranking. And I wouldn't have known the difference. So for me, I was like, okay, I got to get these 600 ideas down to like something that is reasonable. For me, it was about 100. Like that's kind of what I have on my hit list. But I have like a giant spreadsheet, right? Where I have all those 600 still for the future. And then I have like a KGR tab because you gave us a template. Right. I was like, great. Template, something to get me from 600 to 100. So like that was huge for me early on because I'd never done any keyword research. And I was just like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know which one of these to focus on. So that was a big deal for me.
Cool. And there is a school of thought to not worry about this keyword research, not worry about the search volume, and simply, do what you would have done, which would be like publish it, like work on it. And the problem is you may end up working on it for like a year, 18 months. And you're like, is this working? And you try to explain what you're doing to other people. And they're like, well, how much money have you made so far?
Like, $20.
Yeah. And you're like, well, I've, put in, 2,000 hours and thousands of dollars. So anyway, it's a good way to prioritize so you can get some traction early, a little traffic and,
Well, and it's just a good gut check, I feel like, before you start writing something. because I can write on a lot of those topics still, but it's like the way that I write about them or the piece of that topic that I write about might be different because, you know, a long tail keyword might be underserved and now I can see that. So it's not that I can't write about what I brainstormed about. I can just write about it a little bit smarter.
Right. Very good. So you have about a list of 100 that you're going through and generally prioritize by keyword golden ratio,
That's
maybe
hard
search
too.
volume. And there's a lot of them that are just about equal, right?
Right.
So what do you do?
Well, it's like there's a lot of things where like I had asked you early on too, like, should you go after KGRs with search volume of 0, right? Like you get that question 100 million times.
Yeah.
And I think I apologized when I asked it because I was like, I know you get this all the time, but like, I don't understand why you would still do that. Which now I understand. So I don't know if you want to mention that, but like prioritizing a bunch of keywords with search volume 0, like you obviously don't have data to prioritize. So it's kind of like, what do you feel like writing about today?
Yep.
We'll do that.
Yep.
So
in like to
Georgie, get that bird. You know.
It's funny, she'll see him on the rooftops too. She's nuts.
She's not missing any of those. You know.
Yeah, Georgie, get her.
You know. Good job.
So the reason why you would go after a search volume of 0 for the people that haven't heard me answer this yet.
Or if it's a Google suggest, I guess is.
Yeah. And that's typically, I was going to say, if it's a Google auto suggest, if it is a related search, or there are some that are just like, you know what, it's a good topic because you're in deep and you understand.
And you may have searched for it.
Yes. So go for those. Now, what you don't want to do is have like all your keywords be that. But if it's like, 10% is probably fine.
Right.
Now, good example. I, after doing a bunch of YouTube live streams and getting the same questions over and over again, I was like, well, I need to do a frequently asked questions section, which literally have almost all of them have 0 search volume, but they are searched for often by the exact people that
asked.
I need. Yeah.
Right.
So if you like think of a question like, should I go for a search volume of 0? Probably a video of mine will show up and a frequently asked questions section on my blog. Yeah. So like it's all like people search for it, just not many.
And I read them and I was still like, I'm search stupid. Like I don't get it. But like now I get it. Right now I know what Google Auto Suggest is. I didn't even, like you just need to put in a little bit of time to figure out what all the pieces are and what the terms are. And yeah. But that was a big deal for me because I was like, how do you prioritize a bunch of 0s? And it's kind of like, just do them as you can get to them.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yep. And at some point, like you don't have any more data. And the bad thing is like, you won't know what would have happened if you picked the other thing.
Right.
But the good part is you don't know. So all you can do is like keep pushing forward.
Yep.
And just keep moving forward. As long as you're moving forward, it's better than not. So,
Yeah, but that was huge for me to get from a massive unmanageable list to a slightly more manageable list.
Yeah, 100 you could work with. You're part of the way there. So you're good to go. All right, we're going to start wrapping up here. But I hope you'll come back, Christy, sometime to talk. I think we can dig deeper into some areas. Now, before we finish up, you asked about that first day. You were like, should I do this niche? Like how can you pick? Like, I know, so there's some criteria. So do you want to sort of tell us about some other things you were thinking about before you picked? And then I don't know, we could just talk through choosing a niche because it's really hard, right?
I think that was probably the thing that I struggled with most because I knew from kind of day one what I wanted to do. But then I was trying to justify using all the tools and guidelines that you and literally everyone else was like, well, here's how I pick and here's how I pick. And this person's like, just pick in 5 minutes. I'm like, wait. Is there not a right way to do this? Like, how do I get A's if I can? Right. There's no formula. What are you talking about?
It's pass-fail.
It's pass-fail. Oh, the worst. So I really struggle with that. I probably lost a good month just debating because it felt like you shouldn't invest all of this time and effort in something if it's not the quote unquote right niche. So for me, I was like, Doug, how do I what if it doesn't fit every formula? Like, can I still pick it? And I think I wrote you, which was basically a note to myself, but addressed to you, where I was like, here's all the reasons I still want to pick it. Like, is that okay? Because I'm so exhausted and I haven't even started. And you were like, yes, it's fine. Like, if you're passionate about it and you feel like there's an audience there, and like, yeah, it may be a little harder, or it may take longer, I think is what you'd even said, which I was like, that's fine. Like, I'm in it for a long time. So that's okay.
And I think it's important to know, because some people come at it from different angles, right? So some people basically are in a hurry. They're like, how can I make money as fast as possible?
Which I totally get.
Yeah. And I mean, like that should be like kind of it's always in the back of your head, because most people don't want to waste time. Right. So it comes down to that. You don't want to waste time. And I was thinking about this for myself over the last couple weeks, where if you think about like 3 months or 6 months or 12 months, you may make a certain decision. And if you're thinking about 2 or 5 years or something like that, well, then that shifts everything. We're in a hurry to publish the content really quick, right? 30 articles, which is pretty significant at the length that you're talking about, the quality that you have on your site in this short amount of time. But then if you think back, and I'm kind of all over the place with this, but there are some blogs that you may find that maybe they started in like 2015. Right. Maybe they published something like once a month and it wasn't that great. And then they started getting a little more traction. Now they're publishing more often. Now they have a podcast. Like, things grow like slowly, organically. And I see a lot of topics and niches and maybe interests where, like, if you put in the time over a long period and you're setting all these like roots, that's the wrong analogy. If you're you're making
building the
contacts,
foundation of it so that it can be something that you still want. And
you're making contacts on the YouTube side, on Instagram, in these like growth areas. It's like, those are awesome contacts. And your site, again, your site was basically nothing when you were contacting those people. Very young, not much.
Maybe
some
like
content.
10 articles.
Right. And like, you totally can reach out, you can do all that stuff. And again, I was like, well, there's obviously a market for it. It's a good, you see the people that have been doing it for a while. So I was like, yeah, it's going to take you longer, probably. Some of the,
because it is more of an authority thing like that. It just takes longer.
Right.
Just does.
So for the people that, and again, this is not everyone, but for the people who are like, I have an interest, I am in it for the long haul, I'm not in a huge hurry, I have another job, I want to do this on the side. You have to be patient, which is super hard to do.
So hard. Yeah. You're just not going to see progress for a little while. Right. But there's other kinds of progress, but it's just like, you can't go and compare yourself to a site from 2014. You just can't do it.
And then there's like, you have to do some things to make a couple small mistakes and figure it out. And then you'll be able to do better the next time. So it's definitely like an iterative process. And, here's another good example is iterative, but like you've published some content, you're going to be adding more, but you can and should go back to that early content. So it doesn't have to be perfect the first time. It just needs to be good enough.
What?
And then you can come back to it.
False, Doug. False.
Everyone's like threshold of perfect is different. Yeah. At some point,
it's a burden.
It's rough, especially as a writer, and
it's the worst.
It's tough. Okay, so
but it's true. Like, I think one of the reasons I liked kind of your approach was that you were like, you have to spend time on the right things. Like, you can't just get lost in these tunnels of stuff that like sort of matters, but not really. Like, you just have to go write the content, and that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
So,
and it's one of those where, I don't know, there was like my last boss. I remember one of the later meetings that I was in. I don't know, there was like, there were about 10 projects that were like super important. And she's like, well, we really got to take care of this. And we went through everything. And I was like, okay, which is my priority.
10 out of 10
Yeah,
priorities.
she was like, well, they're all priorities. And then I was like, fuck, like, this is useless. I was like, what are you
Right.
talking about? Like,
Right.
then I knew
It doesn't
that
make any sense.
I could just do whatever I wanted, right? Because so I could say, well, I was so busy on the other
Right.
9. That's why this one, and then
Well, and one of the
it's
things,
worthless.
I don't know, the only way that I can sort of get past the perfectionism is to schedule out like other things that I want to do. So if I have all those other things and I'm like, oh, like that really bothers me about the site, or like, I really want to try this, I know that I shouldn't be doing it right now, right? Like, I know that, but I have to like schedule it for February or schedule it for March, or like know that I'll come back to it to be able to kind of like let it go for now.
Yeah.
So like if you have all these great ideas, like write them down, because you're going to come back to it when you have time. Like just get them on paper so that you don't forget them. It's just, you might not need to do them right now.
Yep. And that's perfect. Yeah. So you can do everything, but you just can't do it all right. Or you can't do it all at once.
Yeah.
And maybe you can't do it well, but 80% is usually pretty good.
Right.
So, all right, cool. Any parting thoughts before we finish up here?
No, I mean, I think, I'm just going to kind of keep playing around with the outreach stuff and see what works and what feels, authentic for the site. And, the next thing I'm going to do is figure out, do I need help with more content? So that's the next thing I'm just kind of wrestling with. So We'll see.
And I think you're not quite at the 6-month mark. And a lot of times you'll get a little bit more organic traffic at that point.
Yeah.
So it'll be super interesting to see if you get like, it's not going to be like, 10 times more traffic, but it's like real gradual, an increase in growth after that 6-month period.
Yeah. Well, and I can already tell like the oldest articles have the most traffic, so like maybe 1,300 or something out of my visitors a month was for one article. And it was the first one I ever wrote.
Okay.
So
very good.
I imagine that'll keep happening.
All right. Well, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll chat again soon. If you people have specific questions that you want us to go over, maybe
we'll chat about it next time.
Yeah. We can do it. So just shoot an email to feedback@doug.show.
Cool. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you. All right. Thanks a lot to Christy. Really appreciate you spending the time and having some tea with me and talking about, life and affiliate sites. So the question that I want to ask everyone is, what topic do you want to have Christy and I talk about next time? We can go into outreach. We can go into Pinterest. We can go into copywriting and other details, but you let us know. We can talk about just about anything. We may do every single one of the topics I just mentioned, but let us know what's most important to you. What questions do you have about each one of those little aspects? As always, thanks for listening to the show. Really appreciate you taking the time out with me. And if you enjoyed it, it would be so amazing if you left a review on like iTunes or wherever you listen. It's fantastic. Any place you listen, leave a review. It'll be great. And if you're brand new, welcome. It's so amazing to have you here. And it looks like you're about 1 hour and 13 minutes into this baby, and that's fantastic. I can't believe you stuck around with me for so long. And if you did, you probably should subscribe to the podcast. And in fact, tell a friend, tell your spouse, tell your kids, tell your parents, maybe enemies, friends, acquaintances, anyone you know, anyone who will listen to you, let them know about it. It'll be fantastic, and I would really appreciate it. I'm Doug Cunnington, and this is The Doug Show. We'll catch you next time.